Welcome back to a podcast whose name is currently in limbo. I am Andrew.
And I am Hannah.
What are you drinking, Hannah?
Iced decaf coffee.
Very nice. I've got flat club soda with a little bit of lemon in it.
Sounds appetizing.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, after the last episode and our name snafu, I'm leaning towards pause it for me.
Yeah, I think I could maybe get on board with that because it makes the most sense so far.
Yeah, we kind of discussed off mic that it has a bit of a double meaning because pause it means like to put forth an idea as though it were the correct one, so to speak. That's my understanding of it anyway.
It seems clever-ish.
Clever-ish. Maybe we should just call the podcast Clever-ish.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, anyway, we just got done, true to our word, watching Enemy, directed by Denis Villeneuve, or as someone I know calls him, Villeneuve. And this is a movie that I had seen already, and you hadn't.
No.
We finished watching it, the credits rolled, and I said, do you want to record an episode right now? And you said, sure. So we haven't exchanged any opinions about it. I have no idea what you thought. I know that you went in expecting not to like it. You told me that right as we were starting it.
Well, I knew nothing about it. And I have so many questions, and I definitely want to talk about it. So that's part of why I was like, yes, let's do a podcast, because I want all this to be on mic, all my confusion for this film.
Right. Okay. So my second time watching it, your first time. So lay it on me. What did you think?
Okay, I liked it, but I'm super confused. When the credits like popped up, like Jake Gyllenhaal, I was like, that's the end? Huh? I guess it's sort of cyclical. I feel like we saw the end. I don't even know. We saw the end at the very beginning or something.
Go on.
But like, there was a spider. What?
Spiders.
Well, that was sort of that was sort of a running theme of the movie, but yeah. I don't understand why. So at the beginning, we saw him go into like sort of a secretive club room thing, and there was women doing things, and she stepped on a spider or something.
Yeah, and the doorman from the building was there.
That I assumed as much because he said, "Can you get me in again? I can't stop thinking about last time."
You do see his face in that scene.
Well, I wouldn't be able to place him because I saw him earlier in the film.
Right.
I don't know.
I was just, for the record, he is there.
Well, fair enough. And you see sort of a flashback of like the one guy's wife in bed. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm so confused. So... Okay, so the copyright of this film is 2013, but it clearly looks like it was shot in the early aughts, or like it takes place in the early aughts, because he had like
phone.
He had a Nokia and everything, and he used like a payphone and stuff, and like who would do that now?
Yeah. I know it was based on a novel, so maybe the novel was, set in that time specifically, because other than that, I'm not sure what the reason would be.
Was the novel Spanish? Because it was a Spanish co-production?
I don't know.
That I didn't look into.
I'm not one who educates myself before podcast taping, let me tell you. No, I think he's French, but do not quote me on that.
Is he French-Canadian or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Hence, no research. Okay.
I did like how it was shot because having lived in Toronto, I know that it's not the most cinematic of settings. I mean, obviously they shoot a lot of films there, but
if you put a wide aspect ratio on it, it can look cinematic.
And they tint it yellow.
Yeah.
Stuff. So
I like the color grading personally.
Yeah. So obviously they shoot a lot in Toronto, but they always like set dress it or make it look like it's some other city.
Yeah. They
don't show the dingy parts of going on the 401 or the Don Valley Parkway or like going to Scarborough and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. They showed like more of a dingier part of the city.
It did feel like Toronto.
Yeah. Like less glamorous kind of thing.
Yeah. Like not like Scott Pilgrim is like a different side of Toronto. This is more like the day-to-day side of Toronto.
Scott Pilgrim is more like hipster artsy angle, like going to Goodwill and stuff like that. But this seems more like oh, I'm a college professor that lives in Toronto and I live in like a lame apartment kind of thing.
Was it Scarborough? Did you say that halfway through?
Yeah, it said like on his website thing that is like the Scarborough branch.
Mm-hmm. And then the other guy, the actor, lived in
Anthony,
Mississauga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a big distance to be commuting back and forth. Because Scarborough is like North GTA and then Mississauga is like South GTA. It's like a long commute back and forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, confusion, so much confusion. My theory at first was it was one guy.
Right, because I remember halfway through the scene where the scene where they meet for the first time. Should we talk about what? No, you know what? Look it up on your own if you want to know what the movie is about. You have the capabilities. Go to IMDb.
I didn't know anything about it purposely, and I'm glad that I didn't because I feel like that would have maybe ruined some of my fun with it.
Yeah, I asked you if you wanted to go in mostly cold or completely cold, and you were like, completely cold.
When I have the chance to, I prefer to go into movies completely cold because then I don't have any expectations really as to what my experience is going to be.
Right. So what I was saying was halfway through, when it's the scene where they meet each other for the first time, you kind of said under your breath, well, my theory's debunked. Because
up until that point, we had just heard them talking on the phone to each other, but I'm like, oh, maybe he's talking to himself or so like one of those kind of movies where it's like it's revealed that he's just been talking to himself the whole time, like
The Shining.
Yeah, or spoiler alert, Fight Club.
Right.
Or it's like Brad Pitt and...
You gotta say what movie you're spoiling first before you say spoiler alert.
Okay, well, anyone who hasn't seen Fight Club at this point, it's like 30 years later. Whatever, we won't go into that.
We're not pulling a Rosie O'Donnell.
I don't know what you mean by that.
The day after Fight Club premiered, she went on a talk show and she was like, I didn't like it. Don't go see it. I'm gonna spoil the ending for everybody who's watching.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a jerk move. That's like with everyone in The Sixth Sense now that they reveal the ending. I'm not going to reveal it now because either you've seen it or you've heard the spoilers.
I haven't seen it.
But I have heard it. I still think it's worth seeing it.
Right.
But anyways, so I thought it was maybe like that where, I don't know, maybe he was talking to himself because when the wife goes to see him at school, he like talks to her and then he goes around a pillar. Mm-hmm. And then she, like, calls her husband.
Right.
So we don't actually see them, like, in the same room with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. So that's what makes it blurry. And it's also blurry because in the beginning... This is so confusing. What is his name? Adam. Adam the professor.
Yeah. Adam Bell.
Yeah. Adam the professor... His mom calls him on the phone and says, your apartment is, like, lame, whatever, kind of thing. And then...
Oh, my mom never says that to me.
Well, it was a lame apartment. He didn't even have a bed frame.
Yeah.
You know, you're an associate professor. You can afford a bed frame. That's all I'm saying.
That's speculation.
What do you mean?
You know how much associate professors make off the top of your head? You just know this information?
I'm assuming he's making enough of a salary where he could spring for $300.
Maybe he's funneling all his cash into ill-fitting blazers. You don't know.
This is true. Well, it's also maybe he's living a double life and can't afford 2 different apartments. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't understand.
See, that's a fair theory.
It's hard for me to understand. There's so many different things. I'm gonna go on so many different tangents here.
Yeah, lay it on me.
So, like, their girlfriends look very similar. They both sort of do, like...
Similar enough.
Yeah, they have, like, the blonde hair, and, like, they both kind of do, like, updos and stuff like that. So, anyways, back to the mother. There's just so many, like, thoughts flying in my head right now.
Yeah, you want me to add another one to that pool of thoughts? The woman who plays Adam's girlfriend, who you thought looked so familiar, is... one of the leads from Inglourious Bastards.
Okay, that's what I recognize her from.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I know her with like a French accent.
Yeah.
So that's accurate. Okay. Right.
The mother.
Okay, so the mother, Mother says, you got a lame apartment. And then later he like goes to her and he's like, do I got like a brother or something? Like, I'm so confused. Mm-hmm. And she like hands him a big thing of blueberries. And he's like, I don't like blueberries. And she's like, of course you do. And like, she's like, you got like a lot going for you. You got like a nice apartment and stuff. I'm like, lady, you just said earlier in the film that you didn't like his apartments.
Did she say that he had a nice apartment?
Yeah.
In the second scene? Mm-hmm. I do not remember that.
Yeah, and then of course she says like, and then you got like a third-rate acting career, and he's like so confused. Like, I'm confused. First of all, I had no idea where this movie was going.
Well, that's a good thing. It was just
like a boring college professor like just bopping around doing his thing, and then
doesn't
he like
know which way is up,
and then he just like puts in a movie, and then like he watches the movie and it's like, okay, it's like, where is this movie going? I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, when that scene happened, as soon as Jake Gyllenhaal in the bellhop costume appeared on screen, you like turned to me and you were like, and you lost me.
It's like, this is not what I expected, because it's like he sees himself as a bellhop and he's like clearly never watched this movie before, doesn't know what it means, and I'm like, okay, this is not what I thought was happening. Mm-hmm. So
well, that's good. That means it's not predictable.
Yeah, up to that point I was like confused. It seemed like his girlfriend would come by every night and then get like mad and then like stomp away or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, he obviously had sort of a boring life, so this was like kind of
invigorating.
Yeah. It was like something to live for almost. Because I'm like, man, this guy is depressing to watch.
Yeah.
He's like, he just needs a cheery film.
Oh, yeah. I could so relate to that. Mm-hmm. I'm in the mood for something cheery.
Yeah, you said like, this is like me in high school.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I thought it was an interesting turn halfway through when, Adam was really gung-ho to meet Anthony. And then as soon as they meet, he feels like threatened. He feels like all of a sudden I'm no longer in control of what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And he wants to get out. I wouldn't be surprised if that is like the exact midpoint of the film. If so, that's pretty cool. If not, whatever.
It seems like it somewhat is, because you got like the establishing of character, you got like the inciting incident of the bellhop thing, and then it's like, okay, like how are we gonna get to the rising action of what's going on? And then that seems kind of like them meeting is like when the sparks fly, and then like all the crazy stuff happens after that, and then it kind of like goes down.
What point in this movie would you say you were hooked?
The bellhop scene.
Really? That's the scene? Because when you were like, you lost me, I thought you meant like you're out. Like,
no, lost me as...
You're not interested anymore.
Lost me as I am super confused, but I am intrigued.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
I totally misread that situation, but I'm glad.
Yeah, because up to that point, I'm like, this is kind of boring. Like, I don't understand what this film is about at all. And then I was like, oh, there's like some kind of evil twin or body double or something.
Well, sorry, go on.
That I was like, oh, okay. Like, the title makes sense. What was my predictions last time?
You thought that he was going to get, like, framed for something.
Well...
And he was going to have to, like, clear his innocence or something.
Well, that's a little more enemy-esque. But, like...
I think the title is just a reference to, like, if you found somebody who looked and sounded exactly like you, would that person be your friend or would that person be your enemy?
That's interesting. Well, the book title is called The Double.
Right.
Well, it was interesting because they met and he was like super excited. And then he's like, Anthony was like, oh, we must be brothers. He's like, no, we're not brothers. And he's like, you got a scar? And then he was like totally freaked out because he has the scar. And then he's like, are we that is obviously so confusing to me. I'm like, are they like clones? Like, huh? Like, what's going on? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Are they the same person? It seems like they might be the same person, or they don't realize that they're switching each other's identities back and forth, because the wife was like, how was school? But like, I'm confused.
Okay, so I definitely interpreted that as Oh my gosh, what are the female characters' names? I can't even remember. Anyway, that I definitely interpreted as the pregnant wife knows that it's Adam and not Anthony, and is just like going along with it, is just okay with it.
That's what I thought, but it was confusing because in the morning it seemed like she thought it was her husband. But then she turned into a spider.
She did turn into a spider. This is true.
It was confusing because he was there and he was obviously trying to like pay back Anthony because Anthony took his girlfriend away. Mm-hmm. But he was kind of like nervous and stuff, and she probably like picked up that he like didn't seem like the same person.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Of course.
But then he was crying, and then she mumbled something.
She said, "I want you to stay."
Yeah, so to me that indicated that she knew that it was the other man, but she was like cool with it for him staying. But then in the morning it made it seem like she thought it was her husband. I don't know.
Maybe she was just continuing to go along with it. You know, there's obviously going to be some kind of new dynamic. Like if he's staying, he's not going to just like stay in that apartment and be Adam Bell. He's going to have to assume this guy's identity, presumably.
Well, it seems like it seems like Anthony has the better appearance of a life. Right. Like nicer suits, nicer apartment kind of thing.
Well, and like Adam and the pregnant wife, I swear at some point I'm going to remember her name, seemed more suited to each other. Because he's like, you're 6 months pregnant. Like, do you need anything? You know, I just thought because you've been walking around. And she's like, obviously Anthony never asked her anything like that. It's like, where's my organic blueberries?
Yeah, and it's like she's distraught and she's like super pregnant. Like, yeah. Yeah, that's tough because the other girlfriend was like kind of mean. Well, I don't know. Like
it just didn't seem like a perfect fit. At the very least,
they were like kind of bored around each other, and then she would just kind of like leave at the end of the night, and like I don't know. It didn't seem like they were together more for like convenience or something. Right.
I mean, obviously he would rather like sit in the living room and watch a presumably 2-hour movie on his laptop than go to bed and enjoy it.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm going to go to bed. And he's like, I'm going to stay up to finish my papers, which is like, you know, it's understandable. You maybe want to get your work done before bed. But then after that, he's like, now I'm going to start a movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot to chew on this movie. I watched this with my brother. He likes movies where there's a lot to chew on and that things are left open to interpretation. So he liked it. Speaking of which, how do you interpret all the spider imagery and themes?
I don't even know where to begin to start. I will say I feel like Adam being a history professor and doing lectures on like totalitarianism and like dictatorship that must relate to like the themes of the movie. Because I feel like I was trying to ingest that information, but there was so much going on because normally Adam would be like doing a lecture and then like another scene would be playing over top of it. So there's a lot to interpret. But I feel like he was saying that like the only way that totalitarianism works is if you slowly assimilate people so it's like their regular everyday of life. Right. So that's what I'm assuming. It's like him assimilating Anthony's life until it just becomes his life kind of thing.
And so the spiders?
The spiders, like, I'm clueless. I have no idea what they mean.
I'll be honest, pretty much I am too. The only thing that I kind of picked up on was that, you know, when the pregnant wife turned into the spider at the very end, it kind of seemed to be like recoiling in fear. So maybe it's some kind of like master of his domain kind of thing, is like he feels like he's in control of the spider instead of being overwhelmed by the spider, like when the spider was crawling across the skyline. Maybe that's a completely wrong interpretation. I really have no idea.
But perhaps. Like normally when I see like imagery of something in a film, I'm like, okay, well, what does that imagery represent? Yeah. But to me, like spiders, what does that mean?
Well,
doesn't mean anything.
I was pretty clueless on it the first time I watched it. So then going in the second time, I was like, all right, I'm going to be watching out for all the spider stuff. I'm going to figure out what it means. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, yeah, I still don't know what it means.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I'm like, I have to hear some other person's opinion about it for me to fully understand.
Like my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is great to be able to chew on a lot of different stuff in this movie. Like some movies, it's just like, oh yeah, that was great. And there's not a lot to say. So for this, it's like part of the enjoyment of watching this kind of film is going along for the ride of it as a viewer and being like, oh, that's the movie? Okay, let's talk about it. Like, what does it mean to you kind of thing. So that's fun.
Yeah. I really liked the style of it. It felt like vaguely Hitchcockian.
I would agree with that. I don't know what about it. Maybe just like an element of suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing where something is going, kind of having the audience turn kind of thing, like in like a magic trick or I don't know, kind of like, oh, here's the big element and it's gonna be like a bombshell to the audience kind of thing, like in Psycho or something. It had Psycho vibes. It also reminded me of the movie The Machinist, which I know was, at least in editing, made out to be kind of like a Hitchcock tribute. So I feel like there's similar family genes throughout all these movies. But like I like the color grading and I thought the direction was good. So this is your first Denis Villeneuve movie. What did you think about the direction and style? Good. I mean, from what I know about his work, he's stylistic and I love stylistic directors.
Yeah.
So I'm all about that. And I found it really interesting. We kind of mentioned before that Toronto's not that glamorous. And I thought he portrayed it in like a really interesting cinematic dingy look because that seems more like what it actually is. It fits the tone of the film. Like Adam's living like a monotonous life. Let's show the aspects of the city that are like not that glamorous, that are like dull. And like, let's have a color palette that's kind of like bland or like... not colorful. Like nothing in the film is bright and cheery. It's all kind of like stained, like yellow, like history, kind of like
like an old book.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. What's interesting is like just thinking back to the scene where you were like, you lost me. With you going in expecting not to like it, and then that scene, I was sitting there thinking that you next to me were not enjoying it. And I don't know if you ever like showed somebody like a YouTube video that you think is really funny and you're waiting for them to laugh and you look over at them and they're like stone faced and they're clearly not enjoying it. And then you look back at the video and all of a sudden you're seeing all the flaws of the video and you're realizing how unfunny it is. That's kind of how the beginning of this movie went for me. Is once I realized, once I thought that you weren't enjoying it, I started looking at the movie like, this is kind of like a crappy movie, you know? It's like predictable and like the style is like, you know, kind of...
I wouldn't say it's predictable.
But then, yeah, like once we hit a certain point, maybe a third of the way through, I was like, no, it is good. What am I talking about?
It is good. Yeah, I guess You Lost Me was confusing. It was more like, I no longer understand where this film is going.
Right.
But that's kind of an enjoyable experience because sometimes predictability, once you've seen so many films, is a little boring.
Yeah. Thoughts on the acting across the board?
Jake Gyllenhaal was good. I think he gave sort of a dual performance. It was like different enough. Like obviously Anthony was scarier, more rough around the edges, a little more of the evil twin vibes, whereas Adam was a little more subdued, everyman, monotonous kind of thing.
It seemed to me like they even had different walks between the two characters.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know if I picked up on that necessarily. The way they carried themselves was definitely different.
Yeah, for sure. That must have been like a fun thing, I imagine, for Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor to like play two different roles in the same scene, in the same movie, same script, and like act them so differently.
Yeah. I would imagine that would be really difficult to like pretend you're talking to yourself, but you're actually talking to like a double that's dressed like you were in a scene that you were doing earlier. That's gotta be really trippy, man.
Yeah. Do you think playing two lead roles in the same movie warrants 2 Oscars because it's 2 different characters and 2 different performances? Or do you think it's like, you know?
Actually, it would be kind of hilarious if Jake Gyllenhaal was nominated for an Oscar just for Anthony and not for Adam.
Yeah.
But like usually in the credits, it's like slash so-and-so. So
right.
it credits them for both
one
roles
credit
at the same time.
Yeah.
But
okay, that makes sense.
That would be pretty funny if it was like, you get an Oscar for this one performance you gave, but not for this other performance you gave.
Anyway, so back to the acting. I thought everybody was great. It was a pretty small cast. It wouldn't surprise me if the budget for this movie was small, because I don't think there were any like crazy effects other than the car crash at the end.
It seemed indie to me, honestly.
Right. Because the Denis Villeneuve movies that I've seen Enemy and Arrival and Blade Runner. And I don't know how many movies he did before Enemy, if he was still kind of an up-and-comer or if he established himself enough to get a budget at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously he had some pretty big-name actors in it. So.
Mm-hmm. Enemy seemed more like a TIFF-type film.
Yeah.
Like highbrow indie filmmaking kind of thing. Like it's got like a moderate budget, but still less than like the big studios, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, speaking of TIFF, I wonder why they chose to set it in Toronto so obviously. Because I don't know. I feel like any other movie would just be like, it's set in a city in America. But this was like very, very clearly Toronto. Like they even had shots of the area code and the phone number that he called, and like, you know, city names everywhere in the skyline. But like, I'm pretty sure Denis Villeneuve is not Canadian, so, and neither is Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know they got like Canadian tax credits, obviously, but a lot of films will shoot in Toronto, but say it's like New York or something, and still get the credits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I appreciated that it took place in Toronto because I'm like, oh, realism. Like, I've been to Toronto.
It felt real, cool. Yeah. My only guess is that the novel took place in Toronto, which if so,
I don't know.
Congrats for sticking to that. But if not, I wonder why.
I feel like most books even, they'd be like, oh, it takes place in this city.
Yeah.
Like the Princess Diaries very, very clearly takes place in New York City. And they're like, for the movie, San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Either way, it was nice to get some Canadian representation, and now we just need some other Ontario-based films.
Well, we gotta make them, I guess.
With big name actors, yeah.
Yeah.
Get Tom Cruise in Ottawa.
I mean, he lived here for a year or two.
There you go. Get him back.
Let's get Jake Gyllenhaal on the horn again.
Tom Cruise, Jake Gyllenhaal, Dan Aykroyd crossover. Movie of a lifetime.
That sounds awesome.
Moving on.
Throw Bill Murray in there, one day cameo, walk on roll.
Yeah. Okay, so final thoughts. Me watching it the second time, I started it, like I said, kind of starting to see the flaws and the cracks and thinking maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And I ended pretty much liking it as much as I did the first time, maybe a little bit more. What about you?
I enjoyed it. The beginning was kind of boring, but I guess that was just build up to sort of the big moment kind of thing. Overall, enjoyable, confused at how they decided to end it. Just kind of like Anthony presumably died in a car crash. Adam, I guess, is taking over his life.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, I'm going to go to this back room where ladies crush spiders. And that's the end.
It definitely left a lot of unanswered questions, but a lot of people dig that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so what's your opinion? Are Adam and Anthony the same person? Do they trade back their lives without realizing it? Like, what's your take on that? I
tend to see movies for, like, what they are visually. I'm not one who like reads a ton into stuff, which is why a lot of things end up having to be explained to me. But I pretty much took it at face value in that they're two different people, you know, and there wasn't anything really psychological going on. maybe if I had started the movie looking for signs that it was more psychological and less physical, I would have been able to pick up on that more. But again, like I said, even my second time going through, I was focusing more on the spiders and just taking it at face value. So I did think they were two people.
But it was confusing because there seemed to be things that indicate that they knew each other or like they were going back and forth or something.
Well, maybe we'll look online to see some fan theories in the meantime.
That's kind of my theory. Is at one point I'm like, is he waking up at one place and then like kind of like having amnesia and like going back to the next place?
There were some kind of dream scenes. Yeah.
I'm like, is that what that means? Is like sometimes when Adam's girlfriend is like mad at him in bed or something, is that like the other guy or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, also like, I don't know if you noticed this, but in the scene with Adam and Anthony's wife, he's wearing a wedding ring.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, go on, because I seem to remember there was a shot of his hand that showed very clearly no wedding ring.
There was a shot where Anthony purposely took his wedding ring off before going off with Adam's girlfriend.
Yep.
Because he was pretending to be him. And then she suddenly just picks up in bed that he has like wedding ring indents on his finger. I'm like, how would you even notice that?
Well, maybe she was kissing his hand or something.
Maybe. I don't know.
But going back to your original point about Adam, you're saying there was a scene where Adam had the wedding ring on?
That's my understanding of it. I saw it. I'm like, he's wearing a wedding ring. But maybe I misread the scene and I need to go back or something. But I'm like, okay, so the other guy had wedding ring marks, but he's wearing the wedding ring. I don't know. Maybe I like got confused on my interpretation of it, but that's maybe how I read it. I don't know.
Well, how do you explain the car crash then?
I think there is two people, but they're bouncing back and forth in each other's lives.
Oh, like already, even before?
Yeah, but not
officially.
Not realizing it somehow.
You
know what I mean?
Right. Well, we can look up some fan theories, and I'm actually, since it's based on a book, I'm interested to see if there's an audiobook of that book.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But they both have scars. Oh, it's so confusing.
Yeah. What would you rate it out of 10 or out of 5?
I don't know if I can say that yet. Like, it's just like, it's confusing, but just confusing equal good movie.
Okay, what would you rate it out of 1,000?
874. I don't know. Overall.
Why not 875?
Overall, I don't know. I was picking a random number. Overall, I liked it. Didn't love everything about it. Had a lot to chew on, which made it enjoyable, but also does like leaving me hanging equal like good movie? Like I don't.
For some people, it does.
I don't know. Like the spiders mean nothing to me.
Right.
But like maybe if I read up on it or read the book, it would make more sense. I don't know. I'm gonna say it's a solid 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
8 out of 10.
Yeah. I would give it the same rating. You can check out Letterboxes for some text-based reviews, which we'll probably have posted by the time you listen to this. I am, in fact, on Letterboxd at Winesty. I didn't think that I was, but I checked. That's too bad. I'd rather it be my name.
Maybe you can change it.
And you are?
I'm almost certain that I'm at Hannah Brannon.
Okay. So we're actually going to take a little break. And when we come back, we may have researched some fan theories, maybe not. But I think in between this recording and the next recording, we're going to watch Arrival. And we'll come back after a little break. For you, it'll be a few minutes. For us, it'll probably be a few days. And we'll tell you what we think.
Sounds great. I don't know if I'll like Arrival. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I don't usually like sci-fi movies. So We'll see.
All right. See you then. We now return to Denis Chat Part 2. It's been a few days since we last recorded. For the listeners, it's been a few seconds. We just finished watching Arrival, but going back to Enemy real quick, we did say we might look up some fan theories. I don't have any fan theories necessarily to present to you, but after reading through it a little bit, I'm more on the team of thinking that it's one guy because Jake Gyllenhaal, I believe, said that he feels like it's about one guy.
See, that was my headcanon for, like, parts of it, but I kept on deciding that, no, they are two people.
I feel like there's evidence for both. Like, some of the ways that people react to the situation and the fact that they're never in the same place at the same time with another person present.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would say.
But then much of it still makes me just want to take it at face value and think that it's two people. But I did read that I think the director, Denis Villeneuve, made everybody sign confidentiality agreements to not discuss what the meaning of the spiders was, which I still really have no clue.
Well, there's also spiders in Arrival.
Well, spider-like beings, sure.
Maybe that's kind of like a theme of his,
right?
Or like a calling card.
Well, you'll have to see Blade Runner 2049 to see if there's any continued use of that. So speaking of Arrival, we literally just finished it. You insisted on watching the credits while I set up for the podcast.
Yeah, because I wanted to see where they filmed it because I thought it was such a beautiful scenic location. I'm like, you know what? I bet this is Canada. I wonder if it's like British Columbia or something.
Right.
And it ended up being Quebec because there was parts of the movie I was like, Montana is beautiful.
Yeah,
like,
you did say that.
It's not even Montana, it's Quebec. And
right.
I should have known, like, Canada is just so pretty compared to the States.
For sure. Shots fired at the States. Anyway, so again, I had seen Arrival already. I saw it when it came out. I saw it in the theater. Better experience in the theater than in a living room. It was so, like, loud. I mean, I had it turned up loud, but we kind of needed it to be loud. But the music and sound effects were so droning that I felt like the sound was going to annoy my neighbors. And so I was annoyed that it was going to be annoying. So I was like, this movie's loud.
It does seem like one of those 2001 Space Odyssey things that if you see it in a theater, it's like a huge,
different experience.
A huge cinematic experience with the thumping and stuff. But at home, it's just...
It was a bit much to handle in the living room. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I liked it a lot when I first saw it. I think I had already seen Enemy at that point because I recognized that... You remember the shot partway through where she's talking about dreaming about the septopods and she turns and she sees one in the corner all of a sudden?
Yeah, that's very similar to Enemy, the end of Enemy.
Exactly, yeah. When I first saw it in the theater, Arrival, that stuck right out to me. I was like, can tell it's the same director, for sure. I swear, like, maybe he dreams of spiders or something. Like, there has to be something there, like some kind of trademark of his. I don't know why. Right. So I liked it my first time seeing it. I was a decent Amy Adams fan. I liked her. I didn't love her. After this movie, I gained a lot more respect for her. I hated Jeremy Renner before seeing this movie. After this movie, I like him enough. He's not one of my top picks. He's no Tom Hanks, but he certainly is a Jeremy Renner.
Here was my inner thoughts as we were watching this. Jeremy Renner shows up. I'm like, ugh, Jeremy Renner is in it. He's kind of like he's kind of like Forrest Whitaker, where it's like, ugh. He thinks he's Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, but he's totally not. Like, seriously, anytime Jeremy Renner was on the screen for the first hour, I'm like, nah. This is boring. Move on. I don't care. Like, up until, like, the last few minutes, I'm like, you could cut Jeremy Renner's character out and, like, it would not make a difference. But, of course, in the end, like, you realize he had some importance to the plot. But for the most part, I'm like, he's just kind of there, and Amy Adams is doing her cool girl linguistic thing. And, like... Indeed. Yeah. I enjoyed her. Jeremy... Not often. He's like much. A piece of plain toast. Yeah. But not offensive, but not delightful. Jeremy Renner, if you're listening to this, I've always loved you. You're my favorite actor. I can't wait to see you in more movies. But anyway.
So,
I think you need to impress me, Jeremy Renner. I haven't seen you shine.
So I liked it. Overall thoughts from you. You haven't really told me what you thought yet. We literally just finished it, sat down, hit record. What did you think?
Okay, I liked the linguistic elements to it because I find linguistics more exciting than making contact with aliens, per se. You can definitely see the DNA of 2001 Space Odyssey, and to some extent, Close Encounters with the Third Kind.
Yep.
Is it the third kind?
Mm-hmm.
What does third mean? It's the second kind.
You know what? I encourage all the listeners to go and look it up because I looked it up once and I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But go ahead and look it up because it's a thing.
It's a bit similar to that where there's some people that can understand the aliens and they try to make like friendly communication with them, and you know the aliens mean no harm.
Yeah.
It's kind of that vibe, which I feel better about. I am less into destructive forces. Like, that just stresses me out.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. That's not what I want to see. But the beginning of the movie reminded me of early on in the pandemic. Like, this was shot in like 2016 or something like that. And it felt very much like, oh, first day of lockdown, everyone's freaking out, panicking, buying, and like people are like going crazy and don't know what to do, and like we all gotta band together to come up with a solution and stuff. So it's kind of like history repeats itself.
Except with aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, well, any kind of global crisis, it's going to be hard to band together because there's so many opposing ideas.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, gave me a good feeling that we're mostly out of that now.
Yeah, I can't imagine watching that at the beginning of the pandemic. I'll be like, no, like, that kind of thing. But, I mean, well, it kind of goes back to how, was it the heptapods? Heptapods. They're saying kind of like they see time linearly.
Yeah, I thought that idea was very interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more movies explore that, but this movie did it very well.
I appreciated that because I like the idea of having a language that kind of is cyclical. Like, I just started studying Japanese, and the way they do symbols is completely different than English. So I just like the idea of like exploring a language that's completely different than like the Latin origin languages.
Yeah, good timing for you to watch this movie, having just started learning Japanese.
Yeah, because to me, it's the same as like heptapods. Like, I'm just looking at like random pictures and I'm like, oh, okay, to me, this means this kind of thing. And trying to learn it backwards, like having no further understanding of that language kind of thing.
Yeah, it's less a movie about aliens and more a movie about like language and time.
That's why I enjoyed it, because if it was about going to space, well, I like that it was a sci-fi movie where they didn't leave the planet.
Yeah.
If it was about going to space and like solitude and stuff, I probably would have been out. I did like
forget
Alien.
Space, man. Cheapers.
I did like Alien. That is an exception. But
the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, it's long, drawn-out solitude. But they did it extremely well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this film is more about language and communicating with people that we don't understand. And that's what I liked about it. And I liked that it was cyclical of seeing like the daughter growing up, and we gained understanding of what she was going through towards the end. It reminded me of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, when Amy Adams says to Jeremy Renner, you know, if you knew what was going to happen to you in the future, would you still make the same mistakes, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it did have kind of Eternal Sunshine DNA, and that it's not told non-linearly like Quentin Tarantino style where it's totally random, but it's told in kind of like a cyclical way, sort of.
Well, it's sort of more like the theme of the film. So the theme of Eternal Sunshine is they're unaware of their mistakes, but they're just kind of like doomed to repeat themselves, maybe in like a lovely way, that even if you knew that the love was going to hurt you, like Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner, she knew from the beginning that they were going to break up, but she still decided to enjoy it while it lasted, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with Joel and whatever.
Clementine.
Clementine, yes.
You remember Joel's name and not Clementine?
I don't know.
Well,
it's because she calls him Jolie.
Does she? I don't even remember that.
And so, like, to me, that stuck in my head. But he calls her Clem. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same sort of theme as that is, you know, even if we know that something is going to affect us, we're still probably going to enjoy it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the aliens the same way. It's like they know they're going to need help in 3,000 years, but that's not going to stop them from doing what they need to do now. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought it was plenty interesting. And you know what? I could have even gone in for more of the language teaching stuff. Like when
Agreed.
They seem to skip pretty fast from like Ian walks to use weapon to save us in 3,000 years.
I agree. Like, to me, this film was about language and like a linguistics teacher, like the science of language.
Yeah.
I would have wanted to see more progression of them speaking, kind of thing.
But for what we got, it was great.
See, I didn't really know what to expect at first. When they were first making contact with them in the beginning, I'm like, I'm bored. I'm so bored. Like, I hate
Really?
I hate this movie.
Really?
And, yeah, until she, like, got out the whiteboard and she's like, I'm human, and, like, took off the hazmat suit and, like, tried to make a real connection with them. I'm like, oh, okay, this is more my vibe. It's more of, like, a human connection thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the hazmat suit and people being scared and everything feeling distant, I don't really like that because it's not a relatable story to me. Like, it doesn't have an emotional connection kind of thing.
Yeah. So watching it again the second time, I think I mostly liked it equally. I think I remembered it pretty similarly. The part where she gets into like the lone pod thing and ends up in like the white space where her hair is all floating, I did not remember that part at all. But other than that, yeah, it was great. I don't really know which one I like more, Enemy versus Arrival. I think before I rewatched both of them, I liked Arrival better, but now I'm not so sure. And it's interesting because they felt like, obviously they felt so similar because it was the same director, but they also felt so different in terms of like what kind of movie they were and what kind of story they were telling. Because Arrival felt so big and Enemy felt so small. Like it seemed like a smaller budget. There were way less actors involved. You know, it took place in itty bitty Scarborough, you know, as opposed to like Arrival taking place like across the globe and with these huge set pieces, many actors, you know. So that was an interesting comparison, the different feels. Obviously, the director's capable of doing many different kinds of things, which is awesome. And I look forward to seeing more movies from him. I don't know how soon I'll show you Blade Runner 2049, because that's more like harder sci-fi that you're usually not into.
I think we should watch it eventually, but I definitely felt like I want to do more of like a throwback kind of thing, like a director study or some kind of study on like older cinema, such as Hitchcock, Kubrick, Truffaut, Orson Welles, something like that kind of thing as our next study, kind of seeing like what we can learn from old cinema and apply it to newer cinema. Sure,
yeah. I'd be interested in some Orson Welles stuff. But yeah, I mean, I was impressed by Blade Runner 2049 simply due to my unimpressedness at the original Blade Runner. I still think the original Blade Runner, after watching it like 2 or 3 times, I still think it's terrifically overrated. I don't recommend it. I don't have fun watching it. Just not a fan. And I know that's an unpopular opinion, but
we could go on and on about that. I'm sure we'll get more into that when we discuss the sequel.
Yeah.
But that movie just doesn't make sense. And it's a shame because I thought the stylisticness would be enough to hold my attention, but the stylistic element of it is, I feel like, the only thing going for it.
Right. But you could see some of what was going on in Arrival. Like, you could pinpoint some things and be like, I see why they picked this guy to direct Blade Runner. You know,
100%.
Like the slow moving, you know, like arcing shots, like moving over these large set pieces and like the dissonant kind of music. Like it felt like a bit of a grandchild of Blade Runner in the modern society.
I would say it's kind of like a new sci-fi thing. Well, that doesn't make any sense, but
A new sci-fi thing.
Yes, like, so you can see all the elements of sci-fi before it, and they sort of modernized it for modern day is kind of what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
So with something like Blade Runner, it makes sense that he would be able to pull something like that off because he's taking all these previous elements that he had used in Arrival and then applying it on a larger scape to Blade Runner, which is set in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I can even see the DNA of Enemy being applied to Blade Runner, taking like a cityscape and making it look interesting.
Totally.
That's a huge draw to the original Blade Runner, is kind of taking sort of a Tokyo-esque city, neo-noir, and making it really spectacular looking.
Right.
So I'm excited to see what he does with that. I imagine it's going to be quite great, at least cinematically.
Well, maybe we'll do another like sort of double feature at some point in the future, and we'll watch like one of Denis Villeneuve's other movies plus Blade Runner 2049. But looping back to Arrival, was there anything that you came away from Arrival like still confused about? Like, you had any questions about, or did you feel like you pretty much got it? Were you confused halfway through, or like not at all?
No, I feel like I pretty much got it. Like, as soon as I saw the blur of like the guy, they're kind of teasing, oh, who's the husband? It's like, that's Jeremy Renner right away. Because she said, leave the science to your father. It's
right.
Like, oh, her father is a scientist.
Yeah,
Jeremy Renner's a scientist. So I got that right away. But one of the things was the rock that the heptapods were in.
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking that it looked like a biscotto, and I couldn't unsee it. I'm like, that's just a big floating biscotto in the sky.
Yeah.
So that kind of took some of the grandioseness out of it. I'm like, I'm just looking at a big biscotto.
The 12 astral biscotti, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, did like the daughter stuff, because like the stuff with the daughter like being slowly revealed that it didn't happen before the main events of the story, but it happened after. Like, I remember really confusing me the first time I saw it, but like I got it by the end. But then the moment where I was like mind blow was when he showed her the phone and was like, here's my private number. You called this. She's like, what? And then that information is like, remembered in reverse by her in the past and then used to cause that future. And I was like, yo.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was one of my favorite moments from watching it the first time, for sure.
Definitely. I really liked, I feel like they explained it well, is she was saying that, they gave us this language. That's their gift, is that it's, it's cyclical kind of thing. And that's how her mind starts to work, is non-linearly. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I was able to pick up on that right away. I also thought the language looked kind of like coffee stains. It
definitely, I have no doubt in my mind that Denis Villeneuve was like trying to come up with like a way for the language to look down at his napkin, like, oh, there it is. Comes to me so easily.
I mean, maybe that's how they did like the first couple things, was they actually like stained a surface and then translated it into some kind of medium archetype.
I mean, it's probably how they did all of them. Wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe.
Okay, so what would you give it rating out of 10, rating out of 5, whatever you want?
Ooh. I'm trying to think of what I gave Enemy.
I probably gave Arrival like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 last time.
I think I enjoyed Enemy more.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think I like more human stories. I'm not as drawn to grandiose of a scale films. I think I gave Enemy like a 9.5, something like that.
Okay.
I'm gonna say I did enjoy Arrival more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Still not my favorite. I think I would recommend it to people that really like sci-fi, that haven't seen it. But it's not something where I'm like, ooh, gotta get me more of that. I think I liked it more just because of what I said, like the grounded elements. So I think I'm gonna give it 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5.
Yeah. I just looked. It looks like I gave it a 9 the first time I watched it. I'm not sure I would go that high this time. Maybe my first time watching it just had more of like for lack of a better term, a shock factor.
Yeah.
And watching it the second time, I kind of knew what to expect and I wasn't as surprised. But I might lower it to an 8. But that doesn't mean it was bad. Just it didn't wow me as much this time. So maybe Arrival and Enemy are on par. I'm not sure. Guess we're just gonna have to rewatch them both again just to find out.
Well, it's
yeah,
possible.
I guess they're both like. Wait, what did I give Enemy? I don't even remember.
Well, I guess you'll have to check. I would assume there's seeing a cool new film in cinema, there would be like an immediacy bias. So it's like, ooh, I saw a cool new film. Oh, that was really great. And then you kind of think of it as better than it is because it was like the last cool, good movie you saw on a grand scale.
Yeah, recency bias, of course.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So now that you're seeing it in like a different setting, you're like, yeah.
Okay, so it looks like my first time watching Enemy, I gave it a 7, and my first time watching Arrival, I gave it a 9. I think I'm going to bump Arrival down to an 8 and Enemy up to an 8. So they're going to be about equal. Because I would say I enjoyed them equally this time.
I just loved Jake Gyllenhaal's like cheeky performances. I just love that he did like the dual performances. So to me, Enemy is slightly better because while I thought Amy Adams was good, her delivery was kind of like she was standing in a cool puddle of water kind of thing. Like she's really breathy and like, oh, I'm just a little chilly. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. She didn't really have many scenes that like really showed any
like a full range of emotion.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good then.
All right.
So next up, we're not going to watch any Denis Villeneuve next. What's on your radar for the time being? I just finished Roger Daltrey's audiobook, and I'm in the middle of Pete Townshend's audiobook. So it's been on my mind to watch Tommy, the movie version of Tommy, because I'm a big fan of the album, but I've never seen the movie. So that's floating around my mind. I have maybe like 8 or 9 hours of Pete Townshend's audiobook left. So maybe once we're done that, we'll watch Tommy. What are you thinking?
Well, I talked about sort of watching older cinema. Mm-hmm. I'm also about to listen to Mel Brooks' audiobook.
Oh, really?
So maybe once I'm finished that, maybe we could watch like a Mel Brooks film that one of us or both of us haven't seen.
Well, I know you like Spaceballs, and I know I don't like it as much. I only saw it once. It was when I was pretty young, but I was already a Star Wars fan by that point, and I was like, this is stupid, making fun of Star Wars, my favorite thing. Maybe as an adult, I can see it through a different lens. So maybe.
I enjoyed it a lot as a kid, and I might enjoy it as an adult, but it might be through nostalgia goggles.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can really give that like a impartial rating. But maybe another one of his films. I'm not sure about that. But
what other films does he have other than... Well, he did Blazing Saddles, didn't he?
He did.
What else?
He's done a ton. To Be or Not to Be.
Mm-hmm. Never heard of it.
Oh, really? It's another one of those insane movies. It's about...
Like a screwball comedy kind of thing?
Yes. It's a screwball comedy about Nazis.
Oh, well, hey, there you go.
But it's like, Mel Brooks is very, very Jewish. Mm-hmm. So it's through kind of that lens. Also Young Frankenstein.
Okay, that I have seen. Yeah,
I do really like that.
I would be willing to rewatch that. Maybe we should if we're gonna watch Young Frankenstein, we should watch it back to back with the like original 1930s Boris Karloff Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. That might be like a Halloween kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of his films are sort of parodies of genres.
Yeah.
So like Robin Hood and Tights, it's kind of a parody of.
Is that Mel Brooks too?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Of like action-y movies, whereas Spaceballs is like sci-fi movies, mostly Star Wars. Blazing Saddles is westerns.
Yeah. So what you're saying is he doesn't have an original bone in his body? No,
he just takes something that he enjoys and runs with it. So I think that's very creative.
I kid.
Yeah. Like he has a film making fun of Hitchcock films called High Anxiety. So maybe we could watch a Hitchcock film and then watch a Mel Brooks film.
Okay, that's fair. Because you haven't seen Vertigo.
Yeah, so I think Vertigo is the main thing it's parodying, so it could be good to see Vertigo and then see High Anxiety.
I hated Vertigo.
Well, it would be something to talk about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those films that everyone says is Hitchcock's best.
Nope.
And so we gotta discuss why or why not.
Yeah.
Like, I thought The Birds was great, but has it aged well? No. But it's fun.
The only Hitchcock movies that I've seen Vertigo, Psycho, Rear Window. He did North by Northwest, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Rear Window still holds up. Psycho still holds up.
So North by Northwest I watched later, but the other three, Vertigo, Psycho, and Rear Window, I watched within probably the same week and a half because I watched them in high school as part of a film studies program.
Sounds awesome.
And I loved Psycho, loved Rear Window a lot. Rear Window is probably my favorite of the three.
Yeah, same.
And I hated Vertigo. And it's not just because of... Oh, we've seen Rope, too. We watched Rope together.
Rope is actually really good.
It's not Jimmy Stewart's fault in Vertigo, because I've seen Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, and he's pretty great in that.
Yeah.
He's pretty good in Rope. And he is completely insufferable in Vertigo. I won't give anything away about the plot, but obviously it's Jimmy Stewart being Jimmy Stewart. Yeah. But the plot was like the main thing. The plot and Jimmy Stewart's acting were the main things that I hate about it.
Right.
But again, I've seen Jimmy Stewart in other stuff, and he's fine. He's tolerable, but not in Vertigo for some reason. And the plot enraged me. I just didn't like it.
Well, I mean, then we would have a lot to talk about. The thing is, I feel like with some cinema, there should be movies that you should see regardless of whether they're good or not. It's just like you need to be aware of them. Like Citizen Kane or something, which we still haven't seen.
Yeah, that's still on my radar. But I feel like with Citizen Kane, I think it's considered revolutionary for its time, is my understanding. So I think before we watch Citizen Kane, we need to watch like one or two movies that came out the year before Citizen Kane to get a baseline of what movies were at that point to really be able to grasp what it did to change movies.
Yeah. I'd assume it's the same with Hitchcock. Like, he was the grandfather of horror. So our modern standards of seeing a lot of really creative and inventive horror, psychological thriller type films, of course, Hitchcock isn't going to compare to that, like, 1960s era.
Right. Well, all that to say, looking forward to having you listen to our next episode where we watch one of whatever many movies we just mentioned, or maybe none. Maybe we'll watch School of Rock again for the 1000th time. What's wrong with School of Rock? Hey.
We've just seen it a lot.
There's a reason. I mean...
Well, yeah. No, it's a great film.
Canadian Bacon?
Maybe.
That's your sick day movie.
Yeah.
School of Rock's my sick day movie.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen Canadian Bacon together.
Yeah. Well,
Part of it's in Ottawa.
Yeah.
You gotta compare it.
Canadian Bacon's your sick day movie. My sick day movies are School of Rock and Talladega Nights, which we also haven't watched in like at least a year, so we should probably throw it on.
For sure. I would say that Spaceballs was another sick day film for me.
Yeah.
It was like a movie that I would throw on, so.
We should do a sick day movies episode.
Sure.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Because we've watched Talladega Nights and School of Rock enough, so maybe we'll do Canadian Bacon and Spaceballs back to back.
Also, Wild Wild West was another one.
Let's mention more movies that we may or may not watch.
That movie has spiders in it. It all ties together.
All right. Finish your kombucha and we'll catch you next time.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.